Josephine? Okay, Ismail acknowledges that he can hear us clearly. Josephine? Perhaps we could hear from you, Josephine, if you can hear us. Let's see who else is here. So we have Josephine. We have Mary, Ismail. Where are these people? I'm seeing some other participants, but I cannot see them here. Okay. Right, so welcome on board. That is, so I've been informed by Dan who is the coordinator of this program, that we proceed. So normally, before we start, we need to do some introduction. Then after the introduction, it's important that we get what are these expectations from this training. Of course, this training is running for today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. So it is important that we articulate what expectations do we have from this, so that as we have the conversations, we should be able looking at are we able to meet these expectations from your perspective and also from my end. So maybe we'll allow Ismail would just share with us your expectations via text or via the chat section. Then I'll be glad to hear from, I don't know why Josephine is not able to, I don't know whether she's hearing us, Josephine, or whether she logged in and she's not able to hear us. But I think it would have been important if we could hear that confirmation from her. Because now at the moment, it's only that it seems that we only have Mary here. Ismail House and panelists. So we only have Mary and let's see who else I need to promote. One attendee. Okay. I think we have Christine also joining us. Christine, once you can hear us, you can confirm and say hi to us. Okay. All right. Good. So I think that's the only person who was online. Okay, can see expectations from Ismail. My expectation to be a good staff to all my colleagues by the end of the session and to be a role model to the rest. Okay, well noted. Fine, so let me hear from Mary. Mary, perhaps you can introduce yourself, then also share with us your expectations as we bring on board Ismail, we bring on board Josephine and Anne.
Good morning.
Mary? Good morning.
My name is Mary Kinyon. I'm in education industry.
Okay.
I work in HR. I'm a HR general practitioner. I want to learn more about management with the aim of being a good manager.
Okay.
An objective manager.
Good. Thank you, Mary. You need to, well, you want to look at becoming an objective manager. That's well put. Thank you. I think you've mentioned that you work in an educational industry.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, Josephine. Josephine. Okay, Josephine seems to be either looks like she's present, but she's not present. And Joel?
Good morning. Good, thank you. And you? Yeah.
And Joel?
Okay.
And Joel seems like Joel is not also in here. Okay. I'm wondering why I only have this.
Can I just confirm? I know teachers are about 50 something.
Yes, I'm logged in and they're not here.
No, I'm in a session. I'll have to send you that on again, no problem.
This thing, we can't hear you. Ismail, you've talked. Okay, so I think it looks like people have a challenge in communicating. Either maybe they're not yet on ready, or maybe we give them a benefit of doubt so that they can join us a bit as we start. So, well, I'll introduce myself. So my name is, I'm a certified HR professional. And I also have an educational background. I'm a teacher, a trained teacher. I'm also a HR professional. Currently, I'm the executive director at the Institute of Pension Management. So welcome all for this interactive session that will be running between today and Wednesday. And I hope it's going to be informative and generally meet your expectations as it is. So normally, as we start our training, I'll normally like to clarify that it's a session of interaction. So we don't expect that James is going to just feed you with information, but we are looking at that interactive session between yourselves and my, so that we're able now to get different perspectives. You may have a perspective that I didn't have, or maybe I may have a perspective that you didn't have. And this platform will enable us now to share more on that and develop a more interactive approach on handling issues. So I'll be taking you through this session today and tomorrow and Wednesday. And first of all, you know, the concept of management by objectives. And from that objectivity is entirely an aspect of, from the normal perspective, we normally set our goals. You hear people saying, I have my goals for this year, I have my objectives for this year, I have my vision for this year, I have my New Year resolutions. Now, the question has always been, you have very, very beautiful documented vision, a very beautiful objective, everything is superb. But then how do we ensure that we implement that? How do we monitor that? Because if you're not able to monitor, you're not able to execute the same, then it just remains as a pipe dream. So normally, the approach to managing people must always have a clear, structured way of initiating it, embedding it into our own processes. How do we manage people? What sort of documentations do we need? How do we monitor that? How do we reward? Because at the end of it, once you're able to tailor make the setting of the objectives to monitoring, eventually to evaluating whether it's successful or not, and coming up with a remedial action, that's when we can always stand up and say, this is the progress that we've been able to achieve. Otherwise, if we don't have that, then we'll end up talking about movement. You know, sometimes people look so busy, but then when you ask them what is that they have attained, they cannot explain anything. So if we are not able to show that, then you find that we don't have, or will not have achieved any progress. So allow me to share my screen as I start off. Okay, so I hope you're able to see it, to see my screen. Mary, are you able to see my screen?
I can see it.
Okay, good. So as I was giving my introduction, I said more often than not, we have all these brilliant ideas, we have all these decisions, we have these actions that we put in place with the aim of moving to the next level. But the challenge has been, to what extent do we attain them? What percentage do we achieve this? There's a study from PwC. It was looking at senior managers. They were surveyed and they gave their opinion on what percentage, on average, of yearly targets do people achieve. And that study revealed so many challenges, because they say that only 60%, according to that survey, according to 60% of the senior managers and executives that were surveyed, confirmed that they normally meet their objectives or their yearly targets. And they gave a number of reasons why they don't get to 100%. And one of the reasons they were saying is that sometimes when you set the objectives, you assume that things will be constant. It's like the political environment will be constant, the social environment will be constant, the economic environment will be constant. So you're looking at it from a very ideal situation. But they pointed out that at times you find that these emerging issues tend to divert the direction of the objectives achievement, because now, instead of you focusing more on the achievement of the objectives, now you focus more on dealing with challenges that have emerged, is you try to chart your way forward in dealing with the issues at hand. And they also mentioned that there are also situations whereby people or companies tend to achieve 100%, but now on very few cases, also attributing to the dynamics within the environment. Some of the dynamics work well for some companies, others not work well for other companies. Take an example of with the COVID-19 pandemic. You will realize that there are some companies that thrived during that period of time. For them, it was boom business. But for others, majority of the companies, it was disastrous. So that being an example of how companies were able now to thrive. Like, for example, companies that were investing more in technology, the issue of innovations with regards to virtual meetings, virtual conferences, monitoring of work from wherever you are using the system. Those are companies that were really sought after during this period of time. Unlike other companies, whereby if you look at the tourism industry, if you look at the education industry, because of the nature of the businesses or the engagements that exist, you find that it was a bit very difficult for businesses to run smoothly. So all these challenges, there are those that come with a blessing to others, others come with a lot of trouble for other businesses. And that's what informs our understanding of what is this management by objectives. So the session today, one will be to determine or to understand what is management by objective. Then we'll also look at the proponent of this concept. Who is this person that dreamed about it and woke up and said, this should be the direction? So we'll be looking at who are the proponents of this concept. Why do we need to adopt management by objectives as businesses? Then also we'll be able to explain the 4 basic principles of MBO. Thereafter, also we'll explain objective setting and smart objectives, in MBO or in coming up with the MBO. How do we, what is this smart objective? How do we come up with objective setting? Then today we'll conclude by looking at the classification of objectives, so that from the classifications, then we are able now to zero in on the specific elements of objectives that we must always look at. What are these key things to our business? What are these key things to myself? So if I'm setting an objective for myself, for example, under what category does it fall when it comes to the classifications of these objectives? So these are the areas that we'll be looking at, and I will welcome any discussions around it, so that we, as interactive and also as objective as possible. So as an introduction, I want to introduce this example of Catherine Turner, who has newly joined a company called Alistair Software Inclusive as a software tester. She has about 3 years of experience working as a software tester in her previous organization, Maxis Software Services Inclusive. After joining Alistair, later learned that the management of this organization is very different from her previous organization. So basically, that's what she's trying to see. Just after 1 month of joining Alistair, Catherine was urged by her manager, Neil Packer, to undergo a goal and objective setting process. In this process, Catherine underwent a process of setting goals for herself for the current year after thorough discussion with her manager. Neil explained to Catherine that Alistair followed the management by objectives process to help set goals for each of its employees so that the employees know what they are supposed to do at the workplace. Catherine felt that this was a much better way of management than that at previous organization. At Max's, employees were not given clear defined goals and objectives towards the targets or to what targets to achieve. They did not know in which direction they were working each day. And we have such kind of companies. As a result, the employees at Max's did not know what was expected out of them. The employees did not understand how they could better contribute more effectively towards the success of the organization. All this confusion regarding their roles, responsibilities, goals, and objectives made their work monotonous and seem like a burden. They just could not see the bigger picture into which they fit in as an indispensable part of the organization. Catherine found that management by objectives process followed at Alistair helped to clearly define her roles and responsibilities for herself. It also helped to chalk out her future course of action in the organization. She was sure that such clear-cut goals and objectives will help her and guide her to deliver her level best and achieve the targets within the stipulated time frame. She also knew that there were some goals or same goals and objectives upon which her performance in her job will be judged during the performance appraisals at the end of the year. And you can see a diagram where we have the performance, we have the skill, creativity, perseverance, the potential, the experience, and the responsibility. This way, Catherine knew that her performance at Alistair will be judged upon set parameters that are specific and measurable rather than the vague measures. This helped Catherine feel confident in fulfilling her role and responsibilities and also confident about the results that would be clear for her manager and the management to see during the performance appraisals. Catherine is very glad that she has joined Alistair Software, which follows such an effective process of management by objective. Now that's what Catherine feels. Therefore, management by objective is a process of setting objectives in the organization to give sense of direction to the employees. So that means you have specific objectives, and as you can see in that diagram, we have the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Hence, it refers to the process of setting goals for employees so that they know what they are supposed to do at the workplace. Even where we are now, do we know what we are supposed to do? We know what we're supposed to do. So if you look at management by objective in detail, then it's a long way, it goes a long way in extracting the best out of employees and make them work as a single unit towards a common goal. Work as a single unit towards a common goal. But now, before we delve more on this, if you look at the case of Catherine, you find that Catherine has she's undergoing what we call a paradigm shift in terms of how things are done in one organization vis-a-vis how they're done in this other organization. And she points out this difference with regard to how things are clear at Alistair and how they were vague in the previous employment or in the previous employer. This is a situation that is not typical to her alone. It's a situation that is typical to us. Maybe even where we are working currently, things are very vague or they are clearer. So the question should be, are we the Catherine in this situation? Or are we Catherine in the previous employment? And how well can we assist organizations so that they are able now to clearly state the objectives of people and how these objectives of people can be embedded in the main organizations? Remember, people do not exist in isolation, but it's through people that we embed the specific goals, which ultimately contribute to the main goals of the business. So the individual competencies, the individual contribution is what we can sum up in the main contribution of the business. Say our business has grown this far, our business has achieved, we have this profit level, or we've been able to enhance our customer satisfaction. That can only be attributed to the individual contributions of people. So that's what emphasizes the need for understanding specifically what is the role of people, how do people contribute, or how do HR contribute towards the achievement of these objectives. So as we look at this definition, we've said that we are looking at getting the best out of employees, or the best out of staff, so that they work towards a common goal. But how do we do this? How do we identify, or how do we extract the best out of staff? It's by ensuring that they are engaged, make sure that these people are engaged to the business, they understand what is in for them, they understand what is their role, they understand how well can they be supported, and they understand what is the ultimate benefit of the business from this kind of engagement. And that also highlights the importance of having employees and organizations existing as partners. Meaning, as partners, you have a common goal that you are working towards that. But in the event that we look at people as any other asset, then you find that it now negates the concept of this partnership. So management by objective will mean that we have to bring people on board. Let us look at them as partners and not as any other asset or any other entity. So this term was coined by one management guru called Peter Drucker in 1954. In simple terms, or in brief, it's referred to as MBO. I know if you've interacted with Peter Drucker has had a lot of philosophies when it comes to management. In fact, when it comes to managing people, he says that you cannot manage what you can't measure. If I'm not able to measure, then I cannot manage that, because it's through measurement that I'm able to determine the level of performance or achievement, and I'm able now to come up with remedial actions or decisions that will work towards uplifting this kind of performance. And at the same time, if you've performed very well, then I should be able to come up with ways of making this performance more or to excel more than it is at the present. So he's the proponent of this concept in 1954, and is also commonly known as management by objective, or MBO. Hence, from the general definition, then it is a process of setting objectives in the organization to give a sense of direction to employees. Remember, we have giving a sense of direction to employees. It also refers to the process of setting goals for the employees so that they know what they are supposed to do at the workplace. I know the question people have been asking is, so we have appraisals. So where does this management by objectives feature in the appraisals? Or is it just a different way of appraising people? Or can we have it on a standalone? Or do we have it embedded in the appraisal? Those are the questions that you find people raising them. That how do we ensure that we have this MBO clearly embedded in our appraisal? And that, according to me, is the basis of this discussion, and it will enable us to understand more on how to bring on board these aspects and bring them into the whole process of appraisal. Now, this MBO defines roles and responsibilities for the employees and helps them check out their future course of action in the organization. What else does it do? It guides employees to deliver their level best and achieve the targets within the stipulated framework. Take an example Today you are attending this training. Now, this training is part of your what? The objective setting. Yeah, you said, at least I need to undertake some professional development, maybe for this period of time, maybe for the year. For the year, I want to undergo 5 trainings. So you set yourself some targets for the end of the year. So at the end of the year, maybe come end of December, then you look at it and say, okay, I targeted 5 trainings. I've only attended 4, or well, I've attended 5 of them. So can I say that I've achieved my objectives? If you didn't achieve half of them, what could be the reason behind you not being able to achieve half of them? Okay, so that's a concept that it syncs very well with, it resonates actually very well with the current scenario, whether at professional level or even at organizational level, with regard to the individual targets that we have at our organizations. So who advocated for this? And I've already mentioned that the proponent was Peter Drucker in his book, The Practice of Management. I know everybody, if you've been in HR, if you've been in management, you've come across this book, Practice of Management. And the first organization that adopted this MBO was the General Electric, which was the first organization to adopt the MBO method for defining goals. So on the same note, as I've said, how do we have our appraisals embedding this concept or this philosophy of MBO? Do we just, or first of all, have we had management objectives from where we work? And maybe that's a question that I should be able to ask you people, whether, do you think where you work, because it would be interesting to understand whether this concept of management by objectives is in any way part of your appraisal process or part of your performance management process. And I think, I don't know, maybe before we proceed, Mary, from this definition and from the aspect of management objectives, how well, I don't know whether your educational industry is private or public, so that now we're able to see whether you do the same. Do you practice this MBO, and to what extent? If not, then what sort of approach do you use to ensure that people meet their targets? Or how are they clearly defined? Maybe if you can weigh into that, it will be a good starting point. Mary? Mary, can you hear me? Mary, are you there? Okay. Who else is here? Okay. So maybe Mary is not getting me clearly. But as I was saying, it's important that we get to know what sort of processes do we have. If we are looking at these management objectives, are we alive to them at organizational level? To what extent do we practice them? So the advocate of this, as I've said, is Peter Drucker. And the Peter Drucker mainly focused on the approach of inviting participation from all managers, that managers come together, they participate in setting goals, and also the strategic planning process, which is very key to all organizations. And thereby, implementation of the range of these performance systems, which helps the organization to remain on the right path. So if you have this SP must in itself now have to be cascaded into different departments. From the cascading, then we have the individual contributions that are also clarified or clearly articulated so that they work towards reinforcing the achievement of the plan. And that's why we're seeing that the major focus of this approach is to invite participants from managers or employees, in this case, to set the goals. So they are part and parcel of setting goals. I don't know, to what extent have you participated in setting your targets for the year? At times you hear people saying that they just got, or in their organization, they just received. It's more of a top-down approach when it comes to the goal setting, where your supervisor tells you, okay, this is what we need to achieve. Make sure that if you have any questions, ask me whether I need to clarify on anything. We have other situations whereby the line manager discusses with the individual employees on the aspect of to what extent can you achieve this? Are you clear on this objective? Is it achievable? Is it realistic? Okay. Are we able to measure it within that period of time? Do you have the necessary resources to make sure that you achieve this within this period of time? So all these will be part of the aspects of why we need to have people and organizations define this concept in line with the expectations. So on the whole, it may be regarded that in the MBO process, the process of objective setting is an important part of performance management process. So coming up with that objective becomes a solution to what lies ahead. It becomes a panacea. So that if my objectives are very clear from the start of the process, then I'm able now to constantly put in my effort, constantly monitor, compare with the threshold, and I'm now able to be on the same path when it comes to the direction that we want to take. This is because the process of objective setting manages expectations by establishing an understanding on the part of the role holder about what has to be achieved, and at the same time acts as a point of reference during the period of performance review. Now, the experience I've had before is that people hate the performance review meetings. And why do people hate this? They hate them because of the approach used by we can blame it to the organizations. The approach used by organizations tend to portray these as a witch hunting process. It makes people feel that they are being targeted. And at no point do they feel that they are part and parcel of the process of improvement. However, contrary to this notion is that senior managers, line managers must be proponents. They must support this. They must educate people on why this should be a process improvement. Let it not appear like it's a matter of, or a time when now you need to point out and say, it's my time now to rate you. No, it's not about just rating, but it's about determining the course of action and determining what role can we do better? In what way can we improve on some of the aspects of performance? How well can we ensure that our performance levels are maintained? How well can we also reduce or minimize the non-performance? That should be the basis of understanding all these processes, coming up with objectives so that people understand what they're supposed to do. There are cases whereby people have gone to court because somebody dismissed them and say that you are not performing. But the question has been is, how do you justify that I've not performed? And we've witnessed cases where employees have won those cases because they were dismissed on the basis of hearsay. Why do I say hearsay? Hearsay in the sense that somebody just believes that I've not achieved my expectations, but when it comes to documentations, we don't see clear outline of what sort of actions have we had. Have we had meetings regarding this aspect of performance level? Did I understand from the initial stages that this is what I expect to achieve? So in most cases, you find that those documentations lack. And whenever we don't have documentations, then it becomes very difficult for you to execute or to prosecute such a case in the court of law. Because you'll be challenged, somebody will challenge you and say, can you produce evidence that this is actually what I'm supposed to have done? And can you also show evidence that you've had numerous discussions around this and there has been no improvement? Can you also provide documentation that this is what we agreed on? So all those have always come up as issues that tend to affect the manner in which these aspects tend to affect performance. So it's important that we define these expectations and ensure that the role holder, who is me or you, knows exactly what I'm supposed to achieve. And also I act as a point of reference when it comes to performance review. That should be the guiding principle. Now, why do we need management by objectives? Why do we need management by objectives? Reasons why we need to propel this, reasons why we need to adopt this, reasons why we need to convince our organizations that this is the way to go. Reasons why we need to adopt these to ensure that it minimizes queries around the performance appraisal process. It also makes the process very credible. It also makes people to seemingly take the shortest time possible when it comes to appraisals. This will also enable us to avoid this case whereby people start a process of performance review today and you do it the whole day for one person. Because you keep on, it becomes a point of push and pull, a point of arguments, a point of discussions, where people now bring in issues that are not even related to the work. They bring in issues that are more personal. They bring in differences that, according to them, is what has informed your analysis of their performance and all that. But if we are doing it, or we understand this management by objective, then it will give us the best platform within which now we discuss objectives clearly as they have been stipulated and understand how well would this have been done better. If we've been excelled, if somebody has excelled more, then also we look at how well can we make it more challenging, because we also want to move away from the routine aspect. We don't want that routineness that can make this work to be boring, because human beings, we like also to have something that's challenging, because anytime we do the same thing day in, day out, then it makes the whole process to be very, very boring. So management by objectives process helps employees to understand their duties and the workplace. As I've already mentioned, I'm able to know what is my expectation, what duties am I supposed to do. Because at times just giving me the job description alone is not enough. I have a job description, yes, but then how do you break it down into measurable components within a specified period of time? Because when I look at the job description is very wide, but then my question is, how is this broken down to ensure that at the end of this period, I'm able to understand the few milestones that I've been able to attain, the areas that need improvement or the areas that need support, so that ultimately I'm able now to fit into this position. Sometimes we do not fit into the position, not because we don't have the competencies, but because there's no clarity on what is expected. You've seen many people who are very brilliant joining organizations, but they don't perform. And you ask them, they'll tell you, no, I don't think that's an organization I'll work for. And they'll share with you the experiences. They'll tell you how they felt frustrated. They'll tell you how whatever they felt from outside is not what actually happened to that organization. Because at times we regard these organizations as this organization as the employer of choice. But at times you get to that organizations and you are perturbed because you start asking yourself, but how do these people get to this level of performance? Yet whatever they're doing does not portray that kind of result. So it will enable people now to understand their duties at workplace. Secondly, we have from the MBO, we have what we call key result areas, which are designed for each employee as per their interest, specialization, and educational qualification. Now, this is specifically, as I've said, when you look at a job description, there are certain indicators that are only defined by the job holder. So you look at the job holder, then you look at the specific requirements. If they're saying, for example, your specialization should be in marketing, then the key result areas of a marketing person will be very different from the key result areas from an accounting personnel. Same from an ICT person, because the aspect of weightage, for example, the weightage that we attribute to a particular indicator in a different specialization will not be necessarily the same if you are also allocating it to a particular person in another specialization. Take an example. If, for example, even you're looking at a supervisor, a manager, vis-a-vis now the specific staff in different specializations. So the key result areas must always be very specific, and they have to be aligned to the level of qualification, so that you don't expect somebody who is less qualified and yet the key result areas are looking at somebody who is very competent, because that will become challenging for the person unless this person is taken through or is taken through a lot of mentorship, a lot of training for them now to integrate themselves with the main component of that job. The third point is that employees are clearer as to what is expected out of them. And I think I've already talked about that. That's a point that we cannot overemphasize, because that clarity is what has always lacked in most organizations. Somebody gives a job description on Monday, they tell you are reporting on Monday. Come to on Monday, you are taken through the company policy, you are taken through general introduction of the staff, the structure and all that. Then you're told, my friend, now it's time to do it, to deliver. But then because of that lack of clarity, now that's the time now you're battling and trying to see, what is that I'm expected of this? What is that I'm supposed to have done? So all these will become challenges towards achievement of these aspects. So employees now become so clearer on what is expected of them. Number 4, managing by objectives leads to satisfied employees. Now, how does it lead to satisfied employees? It makes them satisfied because, one, James, for example, has been involved from the start of the setting of objectives. So we were very clear from the word go that these are my objectives for the quarter or for the half year. Secondly, I'll be clearer on what is expected in each one of them. I'll be expected on the resources that I need for me to achieve. So it will be my role to ensure that I have these resources. If I don't have, where do I get these resources? Then at the end of it, because we are assessing as per these objectives, and it's something that we've been monitoring and understanding how it's done, then I will not complain at the end of it if my objective setting, my management of objectives does not realize what I targeted for, because it will be very clear. I targeted to have achieved this. I've not been able to achieve it. So I'll not have a basis of argument. I'll not have a basis of saying that, oh, the analysis here has been discriminatory. I'll not have any challenge owning up the process and owning up the results. I'll not have a challenge of taking up the initiatives towards betterment of the same. So that's why it is important for us to lead by these objectives, because it makes us to be satisfied, because we've been involved from the start. That's from the drafting process, the monitoring, and also the evaluation. So there is nothing that is very vague in this case. Nothing makes me feel that I've not been given the right environment. So all this is what will bring about why we need management by objectives. It also avoids job mismatch and unnecessary confusions later on. It avoids job mismatch and unnecessary confusions later on. Why do you talk about job mismatch? Is because, as I've already mentioned earlier on, if I'm working on some task which is within my job competency and also within the framework, then it makes it easy for me to fit in this position, unlike if I'm given any other job that's not clear. Because one, lack of clarity will make me feel confused. Two, it also makes me feel that I'm not supposed to work in this kind of environment. I'm not supposed to do these tasks because I'm working on tasks that are not measurable. I'm working on tasks that are not time bound. And I'm also working on things that I'm not able to report. I cannot account for them. That way then, but if we adopt management by objectives, then we minimize occurrence of this kind of mismatch. and also this confusion that can come out of lack of clarity on the same. Another point is that it helps employees to contribute to the achievement of the goals and objectives of the organization in their own way. Remember, since you've taken part in it, chances are that you'll be the proponent of it. You will be looking at how well can I do this better? You'll be looking at how other, or what sort of initiatives can I introduce for the realization of the same. So it helps the employees to contribute to the achievement of the goals and objectives of the organization in their own way, in their own unique way. Then every employee has his own role at the workplace. Every employee has his own role at the workplace. It makes each employee feel indispensable for the organization. So every employee has his own role at the workplace, because once I'm clear on what I'm supposed to do, then I'm good to go. It makes each employee feel indispensable for the organization. What do you mean by this, indispensable for the organization? That means I feel part and parcel of the organization. You cannot separate me from the organization because, one, I'm part of the whole decision-making process. I'm part of the execution. I'm part of strategic aspect of improvement towards the next level of the organization. Because I know very well what sort of objective is the business looking at? What direction are we looking at? That vision is what determines my role within the business. So I'm able now to participate, I'm able to take part in my responsibilities with clarity. I'm able to take part in this process with a lot of engagement. I'm able to do that because of the kind of determination that I have developed, because of being part of the whole process of this management by objectives. But failure to do that, it actually brings about cases whereby people complain that somebody just woke up and told them, I want you to achieve this. They feel that they're being forced some decisions down their throats. They feel that some actions are being forced onto them to achieve. That's what will bring about this aspect of people feeling that they're not part and parcel of the organization. So it's important that through MBO, people feel indispensable. And once people feel indispensable, that means the level of commitment is to the roof. They're so committed, they're so driven, and therefore the engagement level is what we are actually looking at and making it say that these people feel they leave the organization, they feel that it's them that drive this business, it's them that feel that if this business does not progress to the next level, they also get affected. That's the kind of feeling that we are looking at here. That you find that you develop that attachment to the business to the extent that every time, every decision that you make, even people when they make errors, you really want to come in and support them, because you believe that it is through them that the business is where it is. It is because of you that the business is where it is. It's because of the business that you are where you are. So it becomes a sort of chain when it comes to the sort of expectations that everyone is looking for. It also develops a feeling of loyalty towards the organization. We look at people becoming so loyal. We look at people becoming so satisfied with the business to the extent that it is them. It's like sometimes you see people and say, this organization or these people. And I can give you an example. Sometimes you hear people saying that if you have some of these public entities, they are not very sensitive to complaints. But it's not that all the public institutions are bad. It's just because of certain individuals in that organization have that myopic manner of handling things. And at times, people generalize and say, because it's public or because it's this kind of institution, which is not the case. And that we normally peg it to the culture of the organization. And the culture of the organization is brought about by the loyalty levels. So depending on how that culture is, to what depth is it, how is it rooted to the organization, that's when sometimes when people interact with the customers outside here, then the kind of character that they exhibit makes us now to conclude and say that if you are from this sector, that means this is how you need to behave. If you're in the police force, this is how you need to behave. If you are in the medical industry, this is how you're supposed to behave, because of the connotation we've developed out of the few people that work in those organizations and how they are portrayed themselves. Okay, so that's now on the aspect of loyalty. Next, MBO also helps employees to stick to the organization for a longer span of time. It helps employees to stick to the organization for a longer span of time. So people will be very, as I've said, because of that commitment, because of the satisfaction, they're able now to work in that organization for a longer period of time. You know, once you're committed now, you don't have time to start looking for opportunities. But the moment you feel dissatisfied, the moment you feel that you're not valued, that's the first point where now you start looking for opportunities. So all these aspects of people moving from one organization to another, we can also attribute it to some, at times, lack of clarity in how things are done. Because when you get people that are feeling that, for me, if there's no clarity, then I don't want to work in this organization, they'll be looking for opportunities. So it all boils down to, are we clear on what people need to undertake? Another benefit is that it helps employees to contribute effectively towards the success of the organization. As I've said, the moment you have committed people, the moment you have satisfied employees, these are people that will every now and then come up with innovative ways of making the business better. They're the ones who will be singing on how well that business can do better. So this is a point where now you don't even need to get external consultants to advise you on what needs to be done. You find that people themselves tend to have that urge. They'll be finding out what other companies are doing. They'll be finding out how other sectors are doing. And through that information, now they'll come up with some of the suggestions on how well their business can be better. And this one you can only experience in some organizations where you find that employees are very, very instrumental when it comes to certain decisions. And they'll come up with very brilliant ideas, and they'll tell you, this is what we found out, and I believe as we can do it differently. That is a concept that comes out of what? The success of the business. Once you have people rooted to the business, then of course, as partners, they'll want to see the best for the business. Next is, it helps employees to enjoy their work in their workplace and to not treat work as a burden. Okay. So people will enjoy their work. Satisfied employees will enjoy their work. They will enjoy their workplace. They'll not be waking up and saying, am I going back to this business? Am I going back to this company again? So that way then, through MBO, then people will love their work. They will enjoy what they do. And therefore, they do not be looking at work as a burden. Another one is that it ensures effective communication among employees. Now, why do we bring in this issue of effective communication? This comes in when I know what I'm supposed to do. I know who my colleague is. I know the sort of integration we have, so that maybe my role supports your other role, or this other gentleman's role supports the other lady's role. So because of this interdependence, then it makes us now to do what? To communicate effectively, because we know ultimately that my role must do it very well. So the other colleague will also be concerned on how well I'm doing it, because they know that at the end of it, it is the teamwork that brings about the best. So that way then you'd see that employees will communicate among themselves. You've seen some of these games under team building where they focus more on communication, and you see teams trying to communicate. You find a leader trying to tell them, no, this is how I communicate. This is how I'm going to signal, okay? And at the end of it, they celebrate and say, wow, we won as a team and all that. That's the concept of understanding what is the objective. If the objective is to move this item from this point to the next point using my nose, then the question would be, how do we put this mobile on the noses and ensure that we maintain it to that point? Now that becomes objective. So that way, then people will come up with, they'll bring together some ideas and say, maybe if you want to use our noses, can we identify people with certain structure of noses so that when you put the phone on those noses, it will actually be stable on it. And also we look at the height of the people that you want to use. You cannot have one person who is very brief, another one who is very tall, yet you want them to face or to interact and move at that level. So it all now boils down to communication. Another point is it leads to a positive ambience at workplace. Positive ambience. Positive ambience at workplace. During this period of COVID-19, I know there are cases, there's one organization that approached me and asked, what should they do with their staff who are supposed to work from home, but they keep on coming to work, even when they're supposed to work from home. So during that period, I tried to interact and ask them, okay, what do you think makes them to come to work despite the directive that they need to work from home? And they gave me very interesting concept. They told me, at workplace, we have 10 o'clock tea plus some snacks. Also, we have 4 o'clock tea plus snacks. We also have internet, stable internet. Then also the other thing was that people in the work, they have these, or their friends, if I'm working from home and my friends working from the office, sometimes I feel that there's that detachment. So it's also that aspect of that social life that also they are missing. And generally also the kind of activities that go on at workplace, maybe because they used to carry out some of the birthdays, they will celebrate, they'll have a cake and do that. So that becomes an ambience at workplace. So at times, when people feel that these objectives are clear and we're working as a team and we understand each other, our senior also understands us and we do that, then it brings about a positive ambience. An environment that does not discriminate, an environment that does not bring about any ill feelings about other people, an environment that we call it breeding development. It's one that breeds communication. It's one that breeds togetherness. It's one that breeds that culture of positivity is what we can attribute this positive ambience to. It also leads to highly committed employees. I think this is a concept that we cannot overemphasize. Highly committed employees will be the outcome of management by objectives. Why so? Because of the clarity, because of the involvement, and because of the participation. That way, then you can always be sure that people will be very committed because they know this is what I'm supposed to achieve at the end of the year. I have all these that's required. I have all these resources. So it's business. We need to do the business. And therefore, that's what will move people to the next level. Management by objective also leads to well-defined hierarchies at workplace. Well-defined hierarchies at the workplace. As I've said, we'll be able to know clearly who is this answerable to who. If I'm working together as a team, then who is my team leader? Who is my colleague? What sort of activities are in tandem? Do we work in tandem? What sort of activities are related to my role? Then collectively, what are we supposed to achieve? So it will be very clear to understand these hierarchies when we engage in, or we have this MBO, leads to highly committed employees and also well-defined hierarchies. It also enhances transparency. Transparency. Nobody will doubt the outcomes. Nobody will feel that maybe my targets are a bit lenient from the other, because once it's transparent, I know what I'm supposed to do. you understand what I'm also doing. That way, then it creates transparency, and people not feel that other people are being given what we call it as some people getting undue advantage over others. It also helps employees and everyone to be clear about one's position in the organization. Of course, once I know what I'm supposed to do, role, my contribution, then it enhances that clarity. It also leads to highly motivated employees. Once you're committed, once there is transparency, once you feel that your role is valued, then you'll be very motivated. It also sets a benchmark for every employee. Every employee will be able to get clarity on the kind of benchmark that is expected. So the question is, did you know that Peter Drucker first outlined the idea of management objectives in his book, The Process of Management, published in 1954? This idea was further developed by George Odion, which was popular now in 1960 and 70. Sorry about that. The idea of management objectives was popular in the 1960s and 70s after being developed by George Odion, who was Peter Drucker's student by then. So what George did was just to enhance or to work more on, or what we call it, an improvement on the main idea of management by objective by Peter Drucker. Good. So before we move to the 4 basic principles of MBO, maybe if there's any question and any clarity from what I've pointed out so far. Any question? Okay. Maybe if you look at the, I think on today's discussions, then we are almost halfway. So I would request that we take a 9 minutes break. Then we proceed from 10. Proceed from 10, if that's agreeable. 9 minutes break. Then we continue at 10 a.m. Okay, Mary, are you there? Because it looks like you are the only one.
I had taken a break, but I'm back. I'm multitasking.
Okay, so I was also actually requesting for a break. Huh?
Up to 10.
Yes. Monica Mutisia. Okay, Monica is there. Okay, thank you, Monica. So we can take a break, then we resume at 10 for the subsequent session.